to the Cover 3 podcast here on CBS Sports. That's Bud Elliott. That's Bill Connelly coming to you live at youtube.com/Cover3 and everywhere you get your podcasts on demand. Thanks for hanging out. Smash that subscribe, smash that like, and come and join us in the chat, a.k.a. the Cover 3 Tailgate, where they recognize that the start time is unique because dadgummit, the show is unique, okay? This is a privilege. This is a joy for what is becoming an annual, sometimes 2 times a year check-in with our friend, our longtime peer, Bill Connelly. Bill from ESPN, where you can see his writing on college football. You can see him get into tennis. You can see him get into soccer. And he's got a new book out right now called Forward Progress, the definitive guide to the future of college football. I got a couple Bill C books on the bookshelf. Bill, they challenge me. They say, I don't believe he's read all those books. It's a fair question to ask. And really, it was the books I got at the University of North Carolina that I didn't read. The ones that I've gotten as an adult, like the ones that I've gotten that you have written, of course, get consumed aggressively. So welcome back to the show. Fired up to be with you. How we doing?
Pretty good. I'd quiz you to make sure you read those first 2 books, but I don't actually remember what I wrote in those books. It's fine. It was a long time ago. The new one's all that matters. So, everybody go pre-order that.
Awesome, man. Good to see you back. So do we want to talk book first? We want to talk about what just came out, which is the final 2025 SP Plus ratings, which, Bill, I didn't have to log in. Now, you should have an ESPN Plus login because you guys do great work over there, but this is to the masses again?
We've been freed.
Yeah, for better or worse, you do not need, there is no paywall standing between you and the SP Plus rankings or basically any other written word that I produce. So
how has this impacted your mentions?
Well, that piece I did in July about the coach rankings thing, where I tried to look at just basically how coaches have performed against the 20-year histories at these schools that they are at, just to see kind of if it came up with anything different than, hey, the best coaches are all the ones that won national titles recently. And it was kind of, we created a boring list doing it by hand. I wanted to see what numbers would tell me. The part where Heupel graded out better than Kirby Smart,
it's good. That's good stuff. Yeah.
Got noticed by a lot of people, and that was not great for my mentions. So, especially since it says Bill says that Heupel's better than Kirby, that wasn't great for me. But it's fine. We're past it.
Georgia fans are very much like they're kind of like Kirby-esque, and they take any possible slight and use it to motivate them for the rest of the day. Like I bet you some guy made 25 sales off your artitle.
Oh yeah, like it had been out 3-4 days.
Smart isn't?
Yeah, no, it had been out 3 days, I think 4 days maybe, and then one of the Georgia sites found it, and disseminated it, and it went crazy from there. Like I had forgotten about the piece. I'd already moved on, and then things got kind of nasty for a little bit.
Did you reach graphic status where it's like a graphic with like a 1 word and 145 point fonts, like whack or bias?
Yeah, I didn't get any good graphics for that one. I really kind of demand better from social media at this point.
All right.
Go ahead.
Yep. No, go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, as you put together your the final pieces, are we talking about any of the last roster updates, any of the last? I mean, what other data is going into the final update to get us set before everything gets kicked off in Dublin tomorrow?
Yeah, there was a little bit of tweaking, and some of the teams that kind of benefited from or suffered from randomness last year, like the Arizona States and Illinois on one end, they fell a little bit more. But the biggest thing was just that since the lines were out, I'd never done this before. I thought it was a pretty good idea. Since the lines were already out, I kind of looked at the spread of my early season projections, just in terms of how much is Ohio State typically favored by, and so on and so forth. Kind of found that maybe the range. I always feel like I didn't quite get the range right in these projections at the start of the year. So I kind of, maybe this turns out to be the wrong approach, but I kind of tried to use those early spreads as a way to see like where are my numbers varying from Vegas the most. Turns out like the top teams maybe needed to be tamped down just a little bit more. And they already were. That was what was interesting heading into this year, was there was already nobody projected in the 30s in SP Plus. There's nobody. I think Ohio State was the highest at like 29. Now they're at like 26. Yeah. And that means that the top 12 teams are separated by a touchdown this year. which I do think it kind of feels accurate based on kind of all the discussions we've had. Some of these top teams are going to turn out to have awesome quarterbacks and they're going to overachieve their projections, but we don't know which ones yet. And therefore a lot of programs could end up being awfully good or awfully disappointing.
Yeah. There's like the very surface level. You could just pull it right out of the research packet. The 6 teams have gotten first place votes for the first time since 2016, yeah. But then also like the data backs it up that there is a cluster. Now there's also a drop off, right? Yep. And SP Plus shows that as well. So it's not as though we're talking about parity. We are not talking about parity, but we are talking about that. Like there is no surefire alpha right now. And we have a lot of very interesting candidates.
Yeah. I mean, there's basically kind of 3 different ways to define parity. One of them is, like the power conferences versus mid majors. That's absolutely not. It stinks. And it's something that, as a 40-something year fan of underdogs, it's been hard for me to accept. And I keep thinking about like, what can we do in the future? And how can we balance this out? Because I mean, Boise State was awesome last year. And also they were like 25 spots lower at the end of the year than they were in 2010. At the end of the year in SP Plus. So the standards have changed in that regard. We do not have parity in that regard. We do not have parity when it comes to looking at the top teams in the conference, in the power conferences versus the bottom teams in a given conference. The spread's still very large in that regard, especially in the Big Ten, which remains very, very, very stratified in terms of top 3 or 4 versus middle versus bottom. But in terms of the separation of just how many teams can talk themselves into maybe having a chance at the national title this year, if just a couple things go right, I think we're starting this year more than we ever have since I've been writing about the sport, nationally, which I guess is 15, 16 years. So that part, at least, we got to embrace what we have. And, that's something we can certainly embrace this year.
And as we look forward real quick, like Boise has a huge advantage over the rest of the Mountain West, but you drop Boise into a power conference and they might be 8th. I mean, depending on the power conference, obviously, but what are they sitting at? Like a 8, a 9, a 10? They're somewhere around that range, but we're not talking even about the 15 range or the 14 range for
right. No, I mean, they're 33rd, projected 33rd to start the season. That puts them at 12th in the SEC.
Right.
Probably about 6th or 7th in the Big Ten. Now in the Big 12, they'd be right there in the middle of contenders.
Just like everybody else.
God, I love the Big 12 so much, but no, I mean, in terms of the power 2, they would not rank very high there, but it's not their fault that a power conference ever picked them up. If they just go ahead and handle their business and they get a one shot at a big team at the end of the year, who knows what happens. I'm really curious about that Notre Dame game in early October. They can gear up toward that pretty well.
Does it feel good to be back to an era in which we actually have quarterback uncertainty and quarterback excitement? To me, just with the portal and with all the guys getting these extra COVID years, I felt like the quarterback, maybe not the ceiling, but the floor for the position was pretty high because you could go out and get an old guy who maybe he's not awful, but he's just not going to make as many mistakes. And now, Bill, like there's so many teams. You said we don't have the defined alpha, no doubt. But I mean, there are a lot of teams out here you can make a case for if all of a sudden they have a top half of the first round quarterback, like if their young kid emerges and like he's that dude, that all of a sudden, like they become the alpha. Like to me, like that's super exciting about this year.
Yeah, and it's funny. It's kind of turned me into a hater this offseason because,
let's go.
This guy stinks. This guy stinks. This guy hasn't ever done anything, and that's not really what I'm used to being. But in terms of uncertainty, like I like it when SP Plus does really well. It helps me, I think, just overall, but also it's a whole lot more fun when SP Plus doesn't know what the hell it's talking about. We'll see. Like, you're right. I mean, if Arch Manning really is the second coming, if he is the latest Manning and he breaks through and, he has 900 career passing yards and he's the Heisman favorite, if he lives up to all that, then of course Texas is number 1. That makes perfect sense. But if he's anything less than amazing, it's not just the quarterbacks. It's the fact that most of the top, like a lot of teams in the top 10 or 15 have brand new offensive lines, brand new defensive lines, brand new receiving cores. Texas has kind of all of those things. And if if Arch isn't ready to just carry the weight of a humongous program on his shoulders, those other things could start to matter, and Texas could be in not a perilous position. Their schedule's navigable. They're still going to be a top 10 caliber team no matter what, but they really might not be number one. Ohio State is projected number one in SP Plus. They have a redshirt freshman quarterback and 2 new coordinators, one of whom hasn't actually been good at one of his jobs since 2016. So, like there's just every single team has these enormous question marks, and even the teams that have the most knowns, Penn State and Clemson, we still don't really know what their ceiling is, especially at the quarterback position. So, even if it turns me into a hater a little bit, it's kind of worth it, not knowing what's about to happen.
How many teams on because you always do the ifs article, hey, they could win a national title if. How many teams on your ifs article had quarterback listed?
Oh, yeah, like most of them. Because even Penn State and Alabama ended up being the 2 teams I had the fewest questions about. Mm-hmm. And that really, I always enjoy starting. Once I'm done with the previews, I love diving into the ifs list because I never really know what I think until I start to lay it out like that. And with Penn State, obviously, those receivers have to, the new receivers have to come through. They have to beat man coverage. They didn't really have anybody who could do that last year. Obviously, they lost Tyler Warren, but if you trade a really super unique tight end for just good wideouts,
2 of them, maybe just right. 2 who can catch a pass in a playoff game.
Yeah, I think you make that trade as fun as Tyler Warren was, you make that trade every single time. So obviously that's a question, but the biggest thing on the board was, does Drew Aller have a little bit more improvement to make? Because man, it hurt so bad watching him against Notre Dame last year. He was walking on the field at the end of that game like, all right, it's Drew Aller time. This is where we go to the national title game. And then he throws a terrible pick over the middle across his body. And so we have to see that he's capable of doing that. The other team with 2 ifs was Alabama. Ty Simpson is the number 1 if on that team by far. So yeah, I mean, it was all the way down. One of the teams I ended up strangely confident in was Texas A&M. I didn't really expect that until I laid it all out. I only had 3 ifs for them, same as Ohio State and Texas and whatnot. And at least, but even with them, part of it was, is Marcel Reed just decent, or does he actually can he be more? We don't know that either.
Tell me, Bud, what do you think?
Yeah. The chat thinks I hate Marcel Reed because I'm like, I don't know if Marcel Reed's defense is all that well. So, all right, I got to ask you about some orange teams here before we pivot out of this. All right.
I really hate orange this year, apparently.
Well, you hate one shade of orange, but the other shade of orange is fairly how does Clemson not have the fewest ifs?
Because they've been a borderline top 20 team for the last 4 seasons. That's basically
21, 22, 23.
20. So starting with 21, let's pull up their SP Plus rankings here. Since Trevor Lawrence left, they've ranked 13th, then 16th, and then 23rd, and then 22nd the last 4 seasons. And that's it. They're projected to improve about as much as anybody in the nation, especially among top teams, because they return the most production of anyone anyone in the nation, much less the top teams. But number one, that 80% figure that they lead the nation with is much lower than a lot of the numbers we've seen in recent years for pretty obvious reasons, both, the cycling out of the COVID eligibility guys and just the fact that the transfer portal is what it is. And even if you don't lose or gain as much as others, it still kind of tamps the ceiling down a little bit. So they're not projected to improve a ridiculous amount because 80% is only so good. And they just have so much to improve on. They were one of the luckiest teams in the country from a turnovers perspective last year. You think back to the SMU game, the ACC championship, if they don't get a couple bounces early, they probably don't even win, and they probably don't even make the playoff, in which case we're not even talking about them as a top 10 team, maybe, much less top 5. So everything to me screams top 8 to 12 team. And that's made me a hater because they obviously, some people had them number 1 or 2 overall. They're what 5th, I think, in the polls, 4th. I don't see it. And I love that they play LSU week 1 because it doesn't matter if I don't see it. If they're ready to be elite, we're going to know pretty much immediately. But I'm just not going to see it until they show me.
I think important for Clemson Clemson doesn't have to win the national championship in week one. Clemson doesn't have to win the national championship every single week. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, a lot of times, even when Clemson's running hot, their power ranking, their SP plus, didn't have them as a number one team. If they are going to be getting back to it, they were 14-0 as underdogs to Alabama in the 2018 national championship game.
Yeah.
I think that's the numbers not liking them and the voters being way over their skis totally lines up. It's also, do you fill out your ballot trying to predict what it's going to look like at the end of the year? Or are you filling out your ballot the way that you see these teams stacking up against each other? Because sometimes I think that when you put Clemson at 4, you're trying to predict, I think they can make the semifinals. And you know what? Given their path to a college football playoff appearance and chance to win a game or two, I could see that along the way. But from the numbers perspective, I don't think that there's any hate coming from you just because you're putting Clemson in that sort of 10 to 12 range, which is, you tell me, you look at it all the time, but that is probably about where I draw the line for what I would call college football's top tier right now.
Yeah, if we're talking about 12 teams being within a touchdown, that means they're one of the 12.
Right.
So it's really not that bad. I just, in terms of upside, in terms of making the semis, sure, absolutely. In terms of winning 2 more games after making the semis, I don't see it at all. And this LSU game early, after that, they're going to kind of disappear from kind of the high level national scene for a little while. Obviously, there could be some challenges against Georgia Tech or who the heck knows what Syracuse or North Carolina is capable of this year.
It does not matter what the point spread is. It does not matter what North Carolina looks like against TCU or Richmond or Charlotte or UCF. We are going to be putting Bill Belichick against Clemson on 9 different ESPNs. You're going to be on 12 different altcasts. This will be the game of the century of the week when we finally get Dabo's crew coming into Chapel Hill.
That's fine. I'm all for it. And Clemson probably wins that game 43-12 after all the hype. But, SMU, they got the Louisville trip later on. They sure didn't look like a potential semifinalist against LSU or against Louisville last year. So plenty of challenges.
That might be an FU. We're still Clemson game too, because I've used this phrase a lot here when we've been talking about them, but I have not seen Clemson fans heading for the exit before the start of the fourth quarter in a long time. And remember how Dabo sometimes takes slights, like when Georgia Tech was lifting weights on the sidelines and he said it messed up the grass, and he came back the next year and they won by 50. I just think there's some receipts being kept right there. We'll see what happens.
And I should say to Dabo, you're welcome. A lot of people are not hating on you very much, but I'm making sure that at least somebody does, I guess. And that's, I think, very important for many coaches.
Is there a chance that SP Plus and some of the rating systems are ahead of the scouts in terms of we see so many of these Clemson guys getting these really, really high preseason draft grades. We got our hands on some of the private ones that the NFL team subscribe to. And it's God, Clemson is loaded, according to this.
Yeah.
But they're not playing against many or any, in some cases, NFL players in a lot of the ACC games. And I wonder if SP Plus is faster or some of these systems are faster to be hey, wait a second. Whipping NC, the worst NC State team in more than half a decade, beating the worst FSU team in 4 decades, beating Stanford, Wake, which is one of the worst Wake teams in a while. What I'm saying? Beating Virginia, they smoked those teams, which is indicative of what good teams do, but also how much credit when you lost to every good team you played, and by multiple scores a couple times. Do you think? You see what I'm saying? I wonder if they're getting what's the limit to the credit that Clemson can get for smashing bad ACC teams? Because I'll say the Knoll, I felt very disrespected in 2013 when Jameis, those guys were killing the ACC teams.
Right.
But I think the bottom of the ACC has fallen off more since then than it was back then. I guess.
And they also didn't kill some. The Jameis 2013 team was unique in that they killed everybody pretty much, just constantly. With Clemson, SP Plus certainly notices that they allowed 5.6 yards per carry. Like, you take out sacks last year, they were 113th in yards allowed per carry, 73rd in rushing success rate allowed. Like, all those dudes up front, all the former blue chippers up front, couldn't give them even a slightly decent run defense. So, I mean, if you basically say, okay, well, Tom Allen's going to fix that, maybe, sure. Like, maybe that was all that. Maybe the coordinator that he held on for too long was to blame for all the problems, but that's just not
Dabo. No.
And with Dabo, yeah, maybe it's slightly more likely, but it's still just not. It's not usually how things work. And making a coordinator change. This again, this will be the best Clemson team in 5 years. Could be their best defense in at least 3 to 4. And their best offense, maybe their best offense as well, especially if they actually make big plays. I think we're making a lot of the fact that they completed some downfield passes for just about the first time all year, when they were already behind against Texas in a game they lost by exactly how much they were supposed to lose by. They didn't even overachieve in that game, but they got a lot of bump from the fact that they actually made some big plays for the first time all year. But it's all, again, like, it's all about where we're starting out. Best offense in 5 years, best defense in however long. They have a lot of climbing to do to get back to where they were.
Coming up on the other side, we continue with more. Bill's got a book predicting the future of college football. What about what we've seen from the present, what it means, and more? Next.
Name's Conrad Harrigan, family man. And if you cross my family, well, you'd better pray.
Mobland, new series streaming March 30th on Paramount Plus.
Back here on the Cover 3 podcast, thrilled to be joined by Bill Connelly. But we were talking a little bit before we got started. What are some of the ways that, Bill, that you've seen the game change? Like, what are some of the rule changes continue to impact? Before we get to some of the off-field, big picture, who the hell knows what college football is going to look like? Are we playing on the moon in 10 years? Those kinds of questions. What about have you seen on field that's been sort of made you take note here in recent years?
Well, I thought with helmet communications and everything else we've seen, I was curious if somebody could really get a tempo game going again. Defenses have shut down tempo. Like, some teams can still do it better than others. Ole Miss still finds some advantages sometimes. And, Heupel can still go fast. The Heupel offense can, even though SEC defenses are basically treating Tennessee like, Mahomes situation where we're just going to form an umbrella. You get all the 60-yard gains you want. No more 30-yard gains to the slot over and over and over again. And so that's kind of changed how they go about things. But I'm waiting for, like, the biggest thing is I'm still waiting for kind of the next big offensive innovation, because it kind of hasn't happened in a while. Defenses have adjusted to all the things that used to work to some degree. And, there hasn't been any big systemic thing. I was curious, and it didn't happen last year.
Bill, how much do you think the tempo downgrade is helmet comms? And how much do you think it's the rule changes that have just compress the game? Like, we talk about, compression at the top, maybe the talent spreading out more, but also just fewer drives for everybody because the game is shortened now. Like, what can you parse that out?
Well, yeah, I mean, definitely teams have slowed down. Fewer teams are trying to really go fast, and that tells me they do that because it doesn't work as well. So that is part of it. You're right. There are fewer possessions in a given game, so the scoring averages are going to go down no matter what. But I do think just play to play. I'm trying to remember what the overall national yards per play average was. It had gone down last I had looked at it, and I think that's still the case. So yeah, it's just really kind of when there aren't any massive innovations or any kind of cheats for gaining yards, you have to have more talent than the other team, and we've cycled back towards that right now.
What do you think, like, scheme diversity is being hurt by all the personnel changing around in the sport? Like, in the NFL, you can only run so much different. Like you can't just have totally wildly different schemes than everybody else, because you have new players every year with free agency and the draft and whatnot.
Yeah, I mean, that's one thing I wanted to kind of study at some point is just, I talked to a JUCO coach 5-6 years ago about like, what do you do tactically? Like that makes these like, oh, we got to keep things as straightforward as humanly possible because most of our guys didn't show up till July. So we're just trying to run the basics and be good at them. And that's all we can do. Obviously, you have third, fourth, fifth year guys who have been around college football a while, then it's not directly parallel to a JUCO situation, but same kind of deal. If you don't know your teammates as well, if your coaches don't know you as well, they might not be able to get as intricate as they would have otherwise wanted to. And you might have to keep things a little more simple. So yeah, I think that's absolutely a thing. I can't quantify it, but I think that's absolutely a thing.
In writing Forward Progress, what part did you have the most fun in, or what was like the most fun thread to kind of tug on and be like, oh, there's something here?
Well, the least fun part was the paying players chapter because I knew all along that story was not going to be finished when the manuscript was due.
Oh, when your draft is due, it's like,
right.
Okay, we're going to have like I think the College Sports Commission just sent another memo today, even further updating the situation.
And even worse than that, I was prepared to basically end with a who knows where this goes kind of situation. But then they couldn't even finalize the House settlement in April. That even waited until after the deadline. So wasn't real pleased with that. And I knew it was going to be bad, and it was even worse than I thought. But no, I mean, I think one of the most interesting thread to pull on, and this isn't necessarily like an offensive trend or anything, but I always joke. I joked in the book. I've joked a lot about how like every change we dislike about the sport is going to kill college football. And college football is already dead at this point. Well, attendance is good and TV ratings are good and everything. You can't actually find anything that suggests that college football is unhealthy in any way. But we know other sports have fallen off at times. And I wanted to basically try to create it with one of the chapters, create a list of warning signs, more or less, of here's what to, we won't know we've fallen off until it's too late to kind of reverse any sort of negative trend. But like, what are the danger signs to look for? And so I looked at NASCAR, looked at a little bit of college basketball, a little bit of baseball, boxing, and just tried to piece together like what lessons can I learn? What should we avoid now before it becomes a problem later? And that was a pretty fun thing to try to put together.
Yeah, the ACC used to have one of the most lucrative media rights deals, and it was almost like the percentage of how much of that was coming from their basketball part of their contract was the majority. And then that was when the flip started to happen. You really got the BCS, you've got the early 2000s, and then all of a sudden cable television, everyone's watching, and college football becomes the national pastime. I do think that what might be happening, oh gosh, and we don't need to take this all the way off the road, but like, I think that college football will always have a chance to be at the top of the other sports. And I just think the NFL is so big.
Oh yeah.
And it's just like the NFL and everything else. It's like college football might be falling, but because as long as college football players then go to the NFL, it's like you're always just going to be hanging on to like the shoestrings, just
right.
making like a shoestring tackle on the NFL, where there will at least always be that. Even if I don't love talking about college football from an NFL only viewpoint, there will always be an audience for college football as long as the players are in college football before they go to the NFL.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's, and if college football falls off a little bit, everything else does too. Yeah. Like right. If you're all falling the same amount, just because everything is a little more diverse, you have a lot more options, then that's fine. I mean, TV ratings kind of suggest that too, obviously. Like 50 years ago, TV ratings for big games in every sport were enormous. And, from the 90s to the 2020s, even, whether it's the football national title game, whether it's college basketball national title game, everything went from like, we used to draw 30 million. Now we're hoping to get 15 kind of deal. Right. Like the World Series dropped off dramatically. And so, yeah, part of that's just the environment. But it does kind of feel like, I mean, the lessons that I took away from that chapter the most, I mean, number one, like, pursuing casuals is great, but casuals are really flaky. You can't really control where they go. And so maybe if you're NASCAR, like moving the Labor Day race from Darlington to Los Angeles wasn't really a very strong long-term play, even if it worked for them for a year or two. And then the other main thing is just you don't have the control you think you have over anything. Part of the problem with NASCAR was that, everything was going great. And, I joked in there that, because of NASCAR, when my kid was 3, her favorite movie was Cars. When my kid was like 12, her favorite movie was Ricky Bobby. Like that was a massive pop culture thing. And then the economic crisis hits and the big sponsorship checks dry up. And suddenly you start to realize, oh my God, the ground we're standing on is a lot more rickety than I thought. And everything kind of falls apart for them for a decade. So yeah, making sure that the hardcore still get what they want from this sport, I do think is pretty important. And that's something we're very kind of fast and loose with at the moment.
So is there a way that, let's tie this back to the compression and staying on this chapter. I really enjoyed the book. Do we think restoring meaning to more fans' experiences is something that is possible? Because I don't know that I totally buy the argument, Bill, that hey, these fans used to have meaning because they thought they could compete for the national title. If you're a fan of,
right.
Take Godfrey's Georgia Southern team, or bad example was they were FCS, but for them, it was always, winning your conference, regional rivalries, all that thing. And this is not an ESPN take, because I think any network that secured the playoff rights was going to beat you over the head with the fact that they had the playoff rights. But the who's in, who's out language, on all the commercials, which is probably how I would have done it if I bought the playoff rights. But it is pretty exclusionary, which is why I like going to 12 over 4. But do we think maybe having more teams, like Chip said, we have 6 teams that got a number 1 vote. There are, on the ifs list, 12 teams that could potentially win it all if a lot goes right. That's a lot more than normal.
Yeah.
A way more than normal. Do we think more teams having a real shot to win the title maybe fixes that interest problem there? And if so, what do we do about the teams at the lower level who have never had the shot to win the national title, but now it's sort of like more of a blinding flash to the obvious, if you will, because all the coverage is on the playoff? You know what I'm saying? How do we fix that sub issue?
One of the quotes I got, what was the JMU athletic director who retired? Bourne, I think. Okay. I talked to him before JMU made its FBS debut, and it made me very happy, because one of the things he said was, I was like, why are you making this jump? You're going to win national titles. Like, what's the motivation? He's like, we wanted to find peers that we could compete with every year, academically and athletically and everything else. We wanted to find our group of peers, and then just we can control who knows what's going to happen everywhere else. But we've got our peers, and we're going to try to beat them every year. And if we do, it's going to be awesome. And it made me really happy, because it really wasn't. It was nothing about, we think we can win a national title one day. No, it was just we found a group we wanted to be associated with, and we want to beat their butts every single year on the field. And that's great. That's because I think, what I concluded, obviously it's the definitive guide to the future of college football. It was pretty blurry in a lot of places because there's nothing definitive. But one of the things that the vision of the sport that I think we need to pursue on a really super high level basis is just make sure that the teams are playing the opponents their fans want them to play. Make sure that the athletes are taken care of. Make sure that everybody understands the stakes. Well, conference title is a little weird now with 80 team conferences or whatever, but just make sure everybody understands the stakes of how they're going to try to win the conference title, how they're going to make the playoff, whatever. Don't make it too complicated. With say a 2018 playoff with 7 auto bids. Just
7 auto bids per league.
Yes, with 7 auto bids for the Big Ten, 7 for the SEC. Yes. Keep things as clean and easy as possible in that regard. And then just, you can't control everything else. And I used East Carolina as an example in my How Things Fall from Grace. So they can draw 50,000 when they're playing the games their fans want them to play. And then suddenly they go years without playing App State or NC State or Southern Miss or any of the teams they play a lot and like playing. So it does feel like, and then when they do that, even if they're decent, they're averaging 35,000 a game as opposed to 48,000. So yeah, I mean, I think that's just on a super basic level. If the teams are playing the games their fans want them to play, and the athletes are taken care of, and everybody understands the stakes of the situation, that'll get you as far down the road as you can get.
I think it's Not everybody gets this opportunity. If you're near a college football program and you're not investing in season tickets, maybe it's one of those like meet the team days.
Yeah.
Just go talk to players.
That's actually another thing that I meant to mention was being able to connect with the roster, being able to connect with the guys. Cause that is one thing with the portal, especially, that I do feel is kind of dicey right now, is when your team is good, nothing matters. Like it's awesome. Everybody's in. But when your team isn't necessarily all that good, and then your fans also don't know any of the players on the field, they start the year not remembering it. Like, I don't know any of these guys. I do feel like you're going to disengage quicker in that scenario.
Yeah. That's where I say that college football still feels healthy. You get down to like I call college football the most human sport in America. Like, it is just like, there are just so many people who are uniquely invested in all of these programs all across the country.
Yep.
You see how hard they work, you see how much they care. And it's just like, okay, like it can feel more commodified. It can feel a little bit more soulless, or like some of the spirits being stripped away from it. But just every single August, you just start getting around these players and you're like, oh man, they don't care about any of this other stuff. Like, they just want to suit up, play with their teammates, go out there, compete, and try to win. And that's like timeless there. So as long as attendance is still pretty good and people are showing up to come and cheer those teams on, please, Lordy schools, don't price them out, but like, as long as we still have that human connection, that human passion, then college football, that I think that it will still always be alive and thriving.
Yeah, I love that. If you go to like Louisiana or James Madison, you check out their weight room. You're like, how could anybody have a weight room better than this anywhere in the world? Like, even like G5 high level FCS, just the facilities are spectacular. If you don't know anything about what Alabama's facility looks like. And like that, just it reinforces just how many different schools, how long the tail is for the sport, how many different schools just care a lot about football and support it like crazy to the best of their capabilities.
All right, Bill, we've been trying to figure out some teams to bandwagon this year at the lower levels. Let's pick some like Tuesday night, Wednesday night, Thursday night teams that we think are of specific interest. Like, just they're fun, they're interesting, they're something to watch. We already did Rice.
Yeah, we did Rice.
It's fun as hell. Like, I think we're on board with Rice this year. Who else we got? Like, who are you really intrigued by, excited? Like, all right, let's check these guys out.
Well, I am. Yeah, Rice was. I did my "How to Enjoy Yourself the Most This Year" piece earlier this week, and the option offenses had a section to themselves because it's talking about a lack of innovation or whatever. Well, Rice isn't going to be good this year, but they're going to confuse the hell out of some teams, and they're going to just randomly rush for 500 yards. Like that's Scotty Abel, his first year at Davidson, when they rushed for over 700 yards in a game and lost.
Yeah.
It still remains one of my favorite. That's one of the hardest accomplishments in football, if you think about it. But I am really curious about them. I'm really curious, like in terms of who's doing interesting things. I don't like USF still remains interesting to me in that regard because they are, got a hypo guy there and they're still trying to use tempo and they didn't break through last year like I thought they might, but I think they're still going to be pretty dangerous and fast. So that's an interesting one to me. Honestly, I am really curious about UNLV from the perspective of when you have one coach who has one big dare and he leaves, as does your quarterback, and basically all your roster, all the guys responsible for that success, that feels like a massive drop-off opportunity. But also they have more blue chippers than a lot of power conference or former blue chippers than a lot of power conference teams do. And Dan Mullen is, grades out really, really well as a head coach, even with the way his Florida tenure ended. So that it feels like they're capable of absolutely anything this season. I'm really curious about them. East Carolina, they were super, super fun last year. When they fired their coach midseason, the defensive coordinator takes over, right? Harrell was the defensive coordinator, but he kind of unshackled the offense to a certain degree, and they were super fast and dangerous. And Caden Hauser's a really interesting quarterback. So they're not one that I think will be amazing, but they do play some pretty decent teams. And starting with the hated NC State right at the start, really curious what they're capable of. They should be super entertaining regardless.
Yeah, I've been calling the UNLV. It's like we used to say Nick Saban's coaching staff was like the school for wayward boys, or whatever. Like that's kind of what Dan Mullen has right now in terms of like all of the third or fourth school for all of these former blue chippers. And we got Vontez Perfect on staff, and we are just like we're doing it. Okay. And you know what? If there's a coach in America who I would trust to put together a functional team with all of these like misshapen tools, I think like that's what Dan Mullen did at Mississippi State. I mean, he had some real NFL players, obviously, at times, but a lot of that success in Starkville was him being able to get the most and tap into the most potential out of a lot of those guys.
If you could merge Anthony Calandre and Alex Orji into one quarterback, I'd be like, they'd win 10 games this year.
But we're going to be running 2 offenses in week 0. You are watching fall camp continue. It just happens to be on television. For this game against Idaho State.
No, I have no idea what they're capable of, and I'm pretty sure I still won't have any idea what they're capable of after Idaho State.
I do wonder with Mullen, some of these guys he's taken, I feel like they still have like one good trick. They just weren't well-rounded enough. They didn't develop into like a full, like a full complement of skills player to be able to play at the level they were at. But there's the list of guys. He's pretty high up the list of guys who can really get a lot out of that one trick.
JoJo Earl. You
exactly.
feel like he could be pretty dangerous in the right system still if he's not, going to be the number 1 receiver at Alabama or whatever. So I'm really curious. Now he has to have somebody throwing in the ball, which again, we'll see. But no, I mean, and it's the same story on defense too. Lots of like Justin Flo, the guy from Arizona and Oregon before that. Just lots and lots of guys on this roster who are clearly athletic and clearly could be good, just haven't been yet. And if enough of them are, that's a really solid football team.
What burning question do you have right now? Like, what's like we're sitting here, it's Friday afternoon. We're gonna have real football tomorrow. Where are you at in your preparation process at this point?
Well, let's keep this week 0 specific. What is Avery Johnson capable of this year? It felt like people were more down on him last year than they should have been. Like
because of 3 really bad games.
Yeah, no, their losses. He was terrible in their losses. But they didn't lose that many games. They still went 9-4 last season. Like
they were all conference games. That was the problem. They projected to win the conference, and then they go 5-4. I mean, that just feels like a huge disappointment.
He just basically looked like a 4-star sophomore starting for the first time and watching defenses adjust to him and trying to figure it out. Like it felt like a very normal situation. But you're right. Like they were obviously projected to do at the top of the conference. They lost some conference games. That's fine. But I still think they could be really, really, really solid this year. And, getting Dylan Edwards back. I don't know about their receiving core for sure. They have at least the one guy, Jace Brown, last year's leader, but we'll see if he has enough there. The offensive line is actually having to take some transfers in, and that's not how Kleiman wants to work. But defense should be solid. Avery Johnson's still super dangerous. I'm really curious about them.
I from reading Go Power Cat, I think they hit on the receivers and the O-line is very TBD.
Okay. And that's important against Iowa State because, not that Iowa State has some massive, they kind of thrive without, their system allows them to thrive without massive defensive line presence and disruption and whatnot. But that's still a really tricky defense to solve if your offensive line is dicey and your quarterback has a lot to prove.
But they do have a guy this year. Dom Orange is in shape for Iowa State. So, if the reports of him are accurate, he's been a guy who was always real heavy and
real big dude. Yeah.
Yeah. But if he's actually in shape, maybe he can be more effective for more plays. That's kind of a scary defense if they have that dude actually in good shape.
Yeah. This is a really fun. I like so many of the early season matchups this year, just in terms of the number of questions we're going to get answered, whether it's K-State, Iowa State, and of course, two big games next week as well. The 4 teams I probably have the most questions about in the top 15 are paired off, and we'll get to learn a lot.
Is Carson Beck going to be good?
Yeah, good. Yes. Obviously there's nowhere to go but down for the Miami offense. And the entire story is, can the defense get better more than the offense falls? It has been kind of interesting, this latest round of kind of the wafts of, man, Georgia's so happy to have Stockton instead of Beck. Like, you never know what to believe when you hear those things, but it's been pretty loud, that sentiment. We'll see.
They're also kind of happy to have some receivers who are like actual receivers and not just 3 gadget guys out there. Like, I mean, if you told Kirby Smart preseason that they were going to go to 4 or 5, how many overtimes they went to against Georgia Tech?
8.
Yes.
All right, you're going to play 8 overtimes against Georgia Tech, Kirby, and Arian Smith's going to have 13 targets, and Dylan Bell's going to have like 7. I think he'd like fall out of his chair. There's no way they ever thought they're going to be throwing the ball to those guys that much.
Yeah, and I mean, Zachariah Branch, I'm not trusting him until he shows me he can actually be a receiver and not an athlete who can do a couple of decent things per game. But Noah Thomas should be a really nice pickup for them. Just as as you're suggesting, just as a whiteout shaped whiteout who can do whiteout things. that's going to help immensely. And we'll see. I mean, Georgia's another team, brand new offensive line. They're double dipping in heavy turnover in the front 7. I know how they recruit. I know Kristen Miller and some of these other guys are supposed to break out, but they fell off up front last season just compared to where they normally are. And now they have to have a brand new starting lineup again. I am kind of like all those other teams near the top. I do have bigger questions than I normally do.
Got anything else? I was going to ask you, do you have a preferred place for people to go and buy forward projects?
I guess the entire strategy for selling a book in 2025 is going on podcasts and trying to rig the Amazon algorithm in your favor. So
here we go. So Amazon.
I'm not going to anybody who wants to go to bookshop.org, apparently they'll just send you a book now. You don't even have to wait till September 2nd. People have just been getting them. The pre-order is more of a theory, I guess, with them, which is fine. If you want the book immediately, go to Bookshop. That can't hurt. But apparently the more Amazon pre-orders, the better. So we'll say that's the go-to answer.
Yeah, so head on over. Again, you can pre-order it right now. Release day is September the 2nd. Man, I'm fired up. Bill, anything else, bud? Or anything else you want to get off your chest for the Cover 3 audience?
Oh, where do I start? No, that's it should be a fun year. All the big concerns we might or might not have. This should be really, really interesting. And the games are really well spread apart this year too. That's something I didn't notice till I was drawing up the schedule this week too. There's like 2 iffy weeks. Otherwise, we have at least 2 big games every single week. It's going to be a lot of fun.
That's awesome.
He is.
That's right. Game draft on Monday. He is Bill Connelly. You can read his work over at ESPN.com. It has been liberated from the paywall. SP Plus is just all of Bill's work is something that is sort of canon here in the Cover 3 podcast. That's why we like to check in with him every single year. Bill, congratulations. The book is there. It is being ordered, and it will soon be arriving to all of the loyal Cover 3 listeners who go and purchase it. Amazon, let's help the algorithm. Bill, thank you very much.
Thank you.
See y'all.